You wake up in 1932. The first thing you notice isn't the light streaming through the window because there isn't much light. It's the cold. It's the kind of cold that makes you wonder if you accidentally fell asleep in an icebox. Your breath comes out in little white clouds, drifting away like your last shred of optimism. The blanket on you is thin enough to read a newspaper through, and the mattress underneath has more lumps than a bad bowl of mashed potatoes. You roll over, and the bed springs complain like they've been asked to fight in a war. You sit up slowly, because if you move too fast, you might tear the one shirt you own that doesn't already have an elbow hole. The walls of your room are cracked and peeling, the paint curling like it's trying to escape. You can hear your upstairs neighbor coughing, deep, rattling coughs that sound like they've been practicing since 1929. Outside the window, the street is still half asleep. A stray dog noses through an overturned trash can. Somewhere, far away, you hear the faint clanging of a streetcar. You shuffle over to the little sink in the corner and splash some water on your face, except water is being generous. It's ice melt from the tap, freezing, metallic, and the color of indecision. There's no soap. You ran out last week, and now you just rub your hands together and hope germs take a holiday. Breakfast is, well, it is a choice between the heel of stale bread on the counter and the imaginary feast in your head. You pick the bread. It's dry enough to scratch your throat going down, but you chew anyway. Your stomach growls like it's auditioning for a horror movie. You try to ignore it. You pull on your coat, the one that's technically a coat, but functionally more of a heavy suggestion. The lining is shredded, the buttons mismatched. You can't even remember what it looked like new. It's just a permanent shade of depression gray now. Your shoes are in worse shape. The leather's cracked, the soles are thin enough to feel the sidewalk's every bump, and the laces are fraying like your patience. When you step outside, the air bites your face. It's the kind of cold that doesn't just chill you. It insults you. You see your neighbors huddled in doorways, collars turned up, faces pinched. Across the street, a man is already standing in line at the soup kitchen. The doors won't open for another hour, but he's there anyway. Because if you wait, you might not eat. The city doesn't hum anymore. It used to. You've heard stories from before the crash, when the streets buzzed with cars and shops and laughter spilling out of jazz clubs. Now the city just shuffles. There's a heaviness in the air, like everyone's walking underwater. Storefront windows are empty, for lease signs curling at the edges. Bank doors are locked. Their windows papered over, and you can still see faint handprints where desperate people pounded, begging for their savings back. As you walk, you pass a corner where 3 kids are sitting on the curb, their legs dangling. They're trying to sell pencils. Pencils. The kind you could get for a nickel back in the day. Nobody's buying. A man in a frayed suit passes by them without looking. He's carrying a briefcase, but from the way his shoulders slump, you can tell it's empty. You turn down another street and almost trip over a loose cobblestone. The newsboy at the corner is shouting headlines, his voice cracking in the cold. Unemployment hits record high. Breadlines grow. He looks too small for his coat, too thin for his voice. You don't buy a paper. You already know the bad news. You're living it. The smell of roasted coffee drifts from a diner, and for a second, you're tempted to step inside. But coffee costs 5 cents, and you don't have 5 cents. Instead, you stand outside for a moment, letting the smell tease you, warm and rich, before the door swings shut and the cold slams back in. You keep moving. A man with a harmonica is leaning against a lamppost, playing something slow and mournful. The sound follows you down the block, weaving through the hiss of the streetcar tracks and the distant clang of a hammer from some half-finished public works project. A WPA crew is digging up the road, men with shovels, shoulders hunched, moving like every scoop of dirt is an act of penance. You reach the park. It's not really a park anymore, more of a tent city. Families huddle under patched canvas, cooking watery stew over fires in tin cans. Children run barefoot in the mud, their cheeks red from windburn. Someone's playing a banjo near the edge of the camp, the music almost cheerful if you don't listen too hard. You remember when you used to avoid places like this, when you thought homelessness was something that happened to other people. Now, you know better. Now you nod to the folks sitting on crates, and they nod back. In times like these, even strangers share an unspoken understanding. We're all hanging by the same thread. The morning drags on. Your stomach's still empty, your hands are numb, and you've already counted the coins in your pocket 3 times, just in case they magically multiplied. Spoiler, they didn't. The sky's the same dull gray it's been for weeks, the sun hiding like it owes you money. Somewhere behind you a baby starts crying. Somewhere ahead someone shouts, and it's not friendly. You don't turn to look. This is life now, a loop of cold mornings, long waits, and the constant ache of hunger. You keep walking because stopping feels dangerous. Like if you stand still too long, the world might just swallow you whole. And maybe it would. Hey, smash that like button before things get economically catastrophic. Your job, if you can even call it that, starts before the sun's fully dragged itself out of bed. You shuffle to your spot on the corner, the one you've claimed through sheer persistence and the fact that nobody else wanted it. You're selling apples, not shiny, perfect ones like in the ads. These are bruised, lopsided, and slightly questionable if you look at them too long. You arrange them in a neat little pyramid because you read somewhere that presentation matters. Not that it really does when your customers are as broke as you are. The air is so cold your fingers feel like they belong to someone else, someone who isn't using them. You keep tucking them under your armpits between sales, or more accurately, between the long stretches of time when nothing happens. People walk past without making eye contact. Some speed up like you're contagious. A few glance at your apples, hesitate, then keep walking, and you can almost hear the math in their heads. Do I want an apple, or do I want to save this nickel in case I can get bread instead? Spoiler. Bread wins every time. You start calling out in a half-cheerful, half-desperate voice. Fresh apples. Only a nickel. The fresh part is debatable, but hope is free advertising. A man stops, looks over your little stack, picks one up, turns it over in his hands, then sets it back down and leaves without saying a word. You try not to take it personally. You tell yourself maybe he's allergic. When you're not on apple duty, you scrape together odd jobs. Things nobody really wants to do, which means they pay almost nothing. Sometimes it's unloading coal from a truck. Sometimes it's digging a ditch for a construction crew that'll probably stop work in a week because the funding ran out. The work is hard, the tools are worn, and your body aches in ways you didn't think possible. You go home smelling like dirt, sweat, and whatever you were unlucky enough to step in that day. Every now and then you land a gig sweeping out a warehouse or carrying crates for a grocer. The grocer's a squat man with a voice like gravel and a cigarette permanently stuck to his lip. He yells at you for moving too slow, then yells at you for moving too fast and almost breaking something. You've learned that no speed is the right speed. Pay comes in coins that barely fill your palm, and he hands them over like you should be thanking him for the privilege. On the best days, you get work through one of the government relief projects. The pay is still low, but at least it's something you can count on for more than a single afternoon. There is a strange sense of pride in it. Not just because you're re-earning money, but because you're part of something bigger, something meant to keep the country from unraveling entirely. You shovel snow, fix potholes, paint benches in the park. It's not glamorous, but you're moving, you're doing something, and for a few hours, the gnawing in your stomach is drowned out by the ache in your muscles. But there are days, more than you like, when there is no work at all. You stand in line at the employment office, hat in hand, waiting to hear if there's anything. The office smells like damp wool and tired bodies. The clerk behind the desk flips through a stack of papers, shakes his head, and says, "Nothing today." You nod, because what else can you do? Then you walk back into the cold, your pockets as empty as when you walked in. Lunchtime is a loose concept. Sometimes it as a real meal, a thin bowl of soup from the kitchen down the street, if you can get there early enough before the line wraps around the block. Another time, you helped an old man move furniture into a storage unit that smelled like mildew and secrets. You've even scavenged scrap metal to sell, crouching in alleyways and rummaging through trash bins while pretending you were just looking for something you dropped. The worst part isn't at the low pay or the aching back or the cold that seeps into your bones. It's the way people look at you, or, more often, don't look at you at all. You've become invisible. You could stand here all day with a sign that says, "Help me," and most folks wouldn't notice. It's not that they're cruel, it's that they're tired, too. Everyone's carrying their own load, and yours is just another weight they can't afford to pick up. Sometimes, when business is especially dead, you let your mind wander. You imagine you're back in better days, walking into a diner, sitting at the counter, ordering a burger and a cup of coffee without even checking your pockets first. You picture a steady job, one where I'll be paid on Friday and can afford to buy more than beans and bread. The fantasy is so vivid you almost smell the coffee, almost feel the heavy warmth of a full belly. Then a gust of wind cuts through your coat and you're back on the corner, staring at a stack of apples nobody wants. By late afternoon, you've maybe sold 2, maybe 3 if the day's been kind. You do the math. That's 15 cents, enough for bread and maybe a little leftover. You pack up the rest and head home, shoulders hunched, fingers numb. On the way, you pass another corner where someone's selling pencils. You exchange a nod, the small, tired acknowledgement of people in the same boat. Back in your room, you count your coins again. The clink is satisfying but brief. You set aside what you'll need for tomorrow as spot on the corner, can to sell apples without apples, and stare at what's left. It's not much, but it's something. And in times like these, something is worth more than gold. You eat what you can, crawl into bed, and pull that thin blanket over you again. Tomorrow you'll be back on the corner, calling out for customers who probably won't come. And you'll keep doing it because that's the job, and the only thing worse than having it is not having it at all. There's Joe. There's always a Joe. He's the kind of guy who talks a big game even when his shoes are falling apart and his jacket is one strong breeze away from becoming a scarf. Every morning he tells you he's just about to land a big job. Says it with a wink, like he knows something you don't. He doesn't. He's been just about to for 3 years now. What he actually does is hang around your corner, bumming cigarettes you don't have, telling wild stories about the money he's going to make. You don't mind him, not really. Sometimes he makes you laugh. And in times like these, laughter is almost worth more than bread. Almost. Then there's Mrs. Henderson, who lives down the hall from you. You can smell her cooking from the hallway. Onions, mostly. Always onions. Her apartment smells like a soup kitchen, and a laundry room had a baby. She's a widow, and she has a way of knowing everybody's business. You don't tell her much, but she still knows somehow. She's the one who knocks on your door when she hears your footsteps dragging after a bad day. She'll hand you a bowl of thin vegetable soup, pretending it's no big deal. "I made too much," she'll say, which is code for, "I know you didn't eat." She's got sharp eyes and a sharper tongue, but her kindness runs under all that like a hidden river. Across the street, there's the Murphy family. 5 kids, 1 room, and a father who works whenever there's work to be had, which isn't often. The kids run barefoot in every season, their knees permanently scuffed, faces dirty but eyes bright. They'll wave to you if they're in a good mood, glare at you if they're not. You've seen Mrs. Murphy hang laundry in the dead of winter, fingers red and raw, breath puffing in clouds. She hums while she works, songs you don't recognize. It's not cheerful, exactly, but it's stubborn, like she's daring the cold to win. And of course, there's your boss, when you have one. The most recent was a man named Frank, who ran a warehouse down by the docks. He had a permanent frown, the kind that looked like it had been carved into his face years ago and was just waiting to be passed down to his children. He smoked constantly, the kind of thick, harsh cigarettes that made the air taste like burnt rope. Frank wasn't cruel exactly. He just treated you like a replaceable part. You got paid late more often than you got paid on time, and when he handed over your coins, it was with a look that said, "Don't spend it all in one place, not that you could." Some people you only deal with once, but they stick in your head. Like the man who traded you a pair of worn gloves for an apple, even though he clearly needed the apple more than you needed the gloves, or the woman who stopped to buy an apple just to have a reason to talk. She told you she used to be a teacher, said it like it was a dream she woke up from too soon. She had a voice that carried, a voice meant for classrooms, but her hands shook when she counted out her nickels. You watched her walk away, her back straight, her shoes worn thin at the heels. There are the hustlers, too, the ones who look at you like you are competition, even if you are selling completely different things. There's a guy 2 blocks over who sells pencils and mutters to passers-by about how apples rot but pencils last. You can't tell if he's trying to be funny or trying to steal customers. Maybe both. Then there's the guy with the harmonica who plays all day, his case open for coins. He's friendly enough, but you've caught him giving you side-eye when your spot draws a bigger crowd, which is hilarious, because your crowd is usually just Joe leaning on the lamppost. It's not all friendly faces. Desperation wears different masks, and some of them aren't smiling. You've had people try to haggle you down from 5 cents to 2. You've had a man snatch an apple from your stack and run. You didn't chase him, partly because you couldn't afford to lose the energy, and partly because you understood. Hunger makes thieves out of decent people. That's the worst part. Seeing that line get crossed in real time. Every now and then you get lucky, and you find yourself surrounded by people you actually want to see. There's a little group that gathers near the park benches some afternoons. Joe, a couple of dock workers between jobs, Mrs. Henderson if she's feeling social. They swap stories, tell jokes, and pretend for an hour that the world isn't falling apart. Someone always has a harmonica or a deck of cards. The air feels lighter then, almost warm, even if you're still breathing steam. But those moments don't last. The group breaks apart, everyone heading back to their own corners, their own battles. You go back to your spot and lean against the lamppost, watching the endless shuffle of tired faces. You've learned to read people in a glance, who might buy, who definitely won't, who's just looking for someone to talk to. Sometimes you're not even selling apples anymore. You're selling a moment of human connection, even if it's just a nod or a quick, "How's business?" before they keep walking. In the evenings, when you're heading home, you pass the same people you saw in the morning, only now they're a little slower, a little more worn down. The Murphys are pulling their laundry in from the line. The harmonica guy is packing up. Mrs. Henderson's window glows faintly, and you can smell onions drifting into the street. Joe's probably at the corner bar trying to convince someone to buy him a drink on credit, and you're counting your coins again, trying to decide if you can spare one for a bit of bread on the way home. These are the people you deal with. Some you like, some you tolerate, some you avoid when you see them coming, but they're all stitched into the same ragged fabric as you are, all carrying the same weight in different ways. You might not be friends, exactly, but you're connected. This is the cast of the Great Depression, and whether you asked for the role or not, you're part of the show. Night in the city during the Depression isn't the soft, romantic kind you see in old movies. It's heavier, darker, the kind that seems to lean on you. The streets empty fast once the sun dips, not because everyone's home safe and warm, but because the dark has its own rules, and you don't want to meet the people who enforce them. Your building groans with every gust of wind, like it's as tired of standing as you are of living in it. You hear a door slam somewhere down the hall, followed by muffled arguing. It's the kind of argument where you can't make out the words, but you know they're sharp. You pull your blanket tighter around your shoulders and sit by the window. From here, you can see the street lamp at the corner flickering like it's deciding whether it's worth the trouble to stay lit. You spot a couple of figures moving in the shadows. One of them stumbles, the other grabs his arm and keeps him going. Probably drunks from the bar 2 streets over. The smell of cheap whiskey sometimes drifts up even this high, carried on the wind like a warning. Somewhere in the distance, a bottle shatters, followed by laughter that's too loud, too long. It's not just the drunks you worry about. Desperation prowls at night. People who've gone too long without food, too long without work. They start seeing other people's coats, shoes, even pocket change as opportunities. You've heard stories about muggings in the alley behind the grocery store, about fights breaking out over something as small as a loaf of bread. One man was beaten for his gloves. Gloves. That sticks with you. Not because gloves are worth much, but because they were worth enough. The wind carries the smell of smoke. Not the comforting kind from a fireplace, but the acrid, choking kind from trash fires. There's a small one burning in the empty lot down the block, and you can see silhouettes gathered around it. Men with their hands outstretched, rubbing them together, trying to steal a little warmth from the flames. Their shadows stretch long and strange against the brick walls, making them look taller, hungrier. You know some of them, not by name, but by face. You've stood in line with them at the soup kitchen, watched them count coins with shaking hands. A floorboard creaks outside your door. You freeze, head tilted, listening. Another creak, slower this time. You hold your breath, eyes fixed on the thin line of light under the door. It doesn't change. After a few seconds, you hear footsteps retreating down the hall. You exhale and tell yourself it was nothing. Maybe it was just a neighbor. Maybe. You try to sleep, but the quiet isn't peaceful. It's the kind of quiet that hums in your ears, makes you aware of every little sound. The rattle of a loose window pane, the faint scuff of shoes on the sidewalk below, a baby crying somewhere in the building, then going silent too quickly. You pull the blanket over your head, but it doesn't block out the noises. Sometimes you dream about before all this. Before you slept with one eye open and your shoes tucked under the bed so no one could snatch them. But the dreams don't last, and when you wake, the dark feels thicker than before. You stare at the ceiling, tracing the cracks you can't see, just to keep your mind from drifting to the what-ifs. You remember one night in particular. You were coming back from the docks later than usual. The streets were slick with half-frozen rain, your breath puffing out in little clouds. You turned a corner and saw 2 men standing over another man who was on the ground, clutching his stomach. One of them kicked him. The other looked up, saw you, and for a second, nobody moved. Then you kept walking, eyes forward, heart thudding in your throat. You didn't stop. You didn't run. You just walked until you couldn't hear them anymore. You told yourself later you had no choice. And maybe that's true. But it still sits in the back of your mind. There's another danger at night, one that doesn't come from outside. It is the way your thoughts get louder when there is nothing else to drown them out. You start thinking about how long it's been since you've had a real meal. You start wondering if the next job will come in time. You think about the faces of people you used to know, the ones who left, the ones who didn't make it. The dark feeds those thoughts, stretches them out until they're as big as the shadows on the wall. Around midnight, the city feels like it's holding its breath. Even the wind dies down. The only sound is the occasional scrape of a rat in the alley or the distant rumble of a late streetcar. You lie there, counting the seconds between noises, trying not to think about how fragile the walls around you really are. One bad turn of luck, and you could be out there in it, sleeping under a bridge, guarding your coat with your life. When the first hint of light starts to bleed into the sky, it's not a relief exactly, but it's something. The shadows pull back, the noises shift from suspicious to ordinary. You hear Mrs. Henderson clattering pots in her kitchen, the Murphy kids shouting at each other in the street. The flickering street lamp finally dies for the day. You sit up, Stretch the stiffness out of your back and try to shake off the night. It's still cold, still uncertain, but at least it's not dark anymore. And in times like these, daylight feels like the safest thing you've got. It's easy to think the Great Depression is just numbers in a book. Unemployment rates, stock market crashes, dates you memorize for a test and then forget. But living in it, breathing it every day, you start to see it's not just about the economy. It's about people. It's about the way hunger changes the shape of someone's face, the way cold makes people smaller, the way a little kindness can feel like treasure. You don't notice these things when life is easy. You notice them when everything is stripped down to the bone. Some mornings you catch yourself remembering what used to be normal. Walking into a store and buying something without counting coins twice. Eating until you were full without feeling guilty. Sleeping through the night without waking to every sound. You think about how you used to throw out bread when it went stale, and now you scrape the mold off and eat it anyway, telling yourself it still tastes fine.
You think about the people you used to pass on the street without looking at them. The ragged ones, the ones sitting against buildings with empty eyes. You realize you've become one of them, and you realize it could happen to anyone. There's a kind of unity in it, strange as that sounds. The Depression doesn't care who you were before.
Banker, teacher, farmer, factory worker. It drags you down just the same. People who never would have spoken to each other before now share benches in the park, share bread, share silence. It's not a perfect world of solidarity. People still steal, still lie, still look out for themselves first. But there's a thread that connects you to the others now, a thin, fraying rope that says, "We're in this together, whether we like it or not." You've seen people break under it. You've seen proud men standing in breadlines, their eyes fixed on the ground. You've seen women wrap themselves in dignity like a coat that doesn't fit anymore. You've seen neighbors vanish overnight, their rooms emptied, no note, no goodbye. You tell yourself they found something better, but you know some of them didn't. You've seen too many faces go from tired to hollow to gone. And yet, in the middle of it, there's stubbornness. Not hope exactly. Hope feels too bright for these streets, but a kind of gritty refusal to give in. You see it when Mrs. Henderson offers you soup without asking for anything in return. You see it when the Murphy kids turn a muddy patch in the street into a game, laughing until their cheeks flush. You see it when Joe, hopeless dreamer that he is, still talks about the job he's going to get, as if speaking it out loud might make it real. You start to understand that survival isn't just about food or shelter. It's about finding reasons to get up every morning. Sometimes those reasons are small. The smell of coffee drifting out of a diner, the sound of a harmonica in the park, the way sunlight hits the frost on the rooftops. They don't fill your stomach, but they keep you moving. You also start to see the cracks in the stories you were told growing up, that hard work always pays off, that good people always get ahead, that the system will protect you if you play by the rules. Out here, the rules don't matter. You can work yourself to the bone and still end up with nothing. You can be honest and still lose everything. The safety net has holes big enough to fall straight through, and the landing isn't soft. Some nights, lying in bed, you think about the people in the government, the men in suits making speeches about recovery. You wonder if they know what it feels like to have your stomach cramp from hunger. If they've ever had to choose between buying bread and buying coal to keep warm. If they've ever stood in a line for hours just for a bowl of soup so thin you can see the bottom of the bowl. You doubt it, and you doubt they ever will. But here's the thing. The Great Depression changes you in ways that stick, even if better times come. You'll never waste food again, not even the smallest scrap. You'll always keep a little money tucked away just in case. You will never look at someone begging on the street without remembering the weight of the apple crate under your own hands. It teaches you things you never wanted to learn, about endurance, about loss, about the thin line between having and not having. It also makes you notice the small mercies, the stranger who shares a crust of bread, the neighbor who watches your spot while you take a break. The moment when someone drops a coin in your hand and doesn't ask for change. These aren't grand gestures. They're tiny lifelines, reminders that not everything is gone. And maybe that's the real lesson. Not that suffering makes you noble. It doesn't. Or that poverty builds character. It just builds calluses. But that even when everything else is stripped away, people still find ways to reach for each other. Maybe out of habit, maybe out of need, maybe because it is the only thing that feels human in a world that has forgotten how to be. When you think about the future, you try not to think too far ahead. You tell yourself to focus on the next day, the next meal, the next job. But deep down, you wonder how long it will last. How many more nights you'll spend listening to footsteps in the hall. How many more mornings you'll wake up to a cold room and an empty cupboard. And then you wonder something else. If the good times ever do come back, will anyone remember what it was like now? Will they remember the hunger, the cold, the way people looked out for each other because no one else would? Or will they just put it in a book, in neat little paragraphs, and move on like it never happened? You hope they remember. Not for pity, not for nostalgia, but as a warning. Because if there's one thing the Depression teaches you, it's that the ground under your feet isn't as solid as you think. It can crack without warning, and when it does, the fall is long.